Michael Turner drove home on their 10th anniversary with his hands tight on the steering wheel. The city lights of a quiet American suburb blurring past as memories crowded his mind. Memories of earlier years when anniversaries meant laughter, late dinners and plans that stretched far into the night. Not the tired silence that now lived between him and his wife Emily. And when he pulled into the driveway, he noticed the porch light was off, which felt wrong because Emily always left it on, especially on important nights. And that small detail made his chest feel heavy before he even stepped out of the car. The house looking still and closed, like it was holding its breath, and as he opened the door, the quiet inside pressed against him. No music playing loudly, no excited greeting. Only a soft calm that felt planned, not empty. And then he saw two coats hanging by the door. One clearly Emily's, and the other instantly familiar, Sarah's, Emily's sister. And that stopped him cold because Sarah never came over without a reason, especially not on a night meant for a couple. And his mind started racing with questions he didn't want to ask out loud. Wondering if something was wrong, wondering if he had missed something important again. And before he could take another step, gentle music floated in from the living room, slow and emotional, the kind Emily used to play when they were first married, when they stayed up talking about dreams instead of schedules. And that sound pulled him forward until he saw Emily standing near the doorway. Dressed simply but carefully, her hair done in the way she knew he loved, her smile soft but unsteady, eyes shining with emotion she wasn't hiding very well, and she said happy anniversary in a voice that carried more weight than celebration. And then Sarah stepped into view beside her, calm and steady, her presence quiet but strong. And the sight of the two women together made Michael feel like he had stepped into something important without knowing the rules. And Emily invited him inside with a small gesture, leading him toward the dining table where candles glowed and familiar photos were placed between the plates. Photos from road trips, holidays, and small moments he had forgotten he once treasured. Moments where Emily's smile looked lighter, where his own face looked less tired. And he felt a sudden sharp ache in his chest as he realized how long it had been since they had felt that close. And as they sat down, Emily spoke gently, telling him she wanted this night to be honest, not perfect. And Sarah added quietly that sometimes people need help remembering what matters. And Michael listened, barely speaking, feeling like the ground beneath him was shifting, realizing this was not a normal anniversary dinner but something carefully planned, something meant to wake him up. And when Sarah slid an envelope across the table toward him, saying it was from Emily, not her, his hands shook as he picked it up, sensing that whatever was inside carried words Emily had been holding back for too long. Words that might hurt but also explain the distance he hadn't known how to cross. And as he looked at Emily, seeing hope and fear mixed together on her face, he understood that this night was not about gifts or apologies yet. It was about facing the truth of where they were, and before he even opened the letter, Michael knew their anniversary had already changed into something far deeper than he expected, something that could either pull them apart or finally bring them back together. Sarah's presence filled the room in a quiet way that Michael couldn't ignore. Not loud or controlling, but steady, like someone who had come with a purpose. And as he sat at the table, he kept noticing small details that told him this night had been planned carefully. The way the candles were placed evenly, the way the photos were turned toward him, the way Emily watched his reactions instead of her plate, and Sarah spoke first, explaining calmly that Emily had asked her to be there because some conversations were easier when someone helped hold the space. And Michael felt a mix of discomfort and relief because part of him knew they had avoided real talks for too long. And as dinner continued, Sarah shared stories from years ago, reminding them of moments they had almost forgotten. The road trip when their car broke down and they laughed instead of fighting. The first apartment with thin walls and big dreams. And each memory landed fast, stirring emotions Michael had buried under work and routine. And Emily listened quietly, nodding. her fingers resting on the table as if grounding herself. And when Sarah paused, Emily finally spoke. Her voice soft but firm, saying she hadn't invited her sister to accuse or judge, but to help her speak, honestly, without fear of being misunderstood. And Michael felt that truth hit him hard because misunderstandings had shaped most of their recent distance. And Sarah then leaned back slightly, giving Emily space while still staying present. And Emily admitted that over time she had started to feel like she was living beside Michael instead of with him. That days passed where they talked about tasks, but not feelings. That love was still there, but it felt quiet and unseen, and Michael tried to respond but found himself listening instead, realizing how often he had rushed to fix things instead of hearing them. And Sarah added gently that relationships don't usually break from one big mistake, but from many small moments of silence. And that line stayed with him, sharp and clear. And the pace of the night moved quickly from polite conversation to something raw and real. With no shouting, no blame, just truths being placed carefully on the table. And Michael felt his defenses fade as he saw how much effort Emily had put into making this night meaningful. How much courage it took to ask for help instead of pretending. Everything was fine, and when Sarah reached into her bag and placed a simple envelope in front of him, explaining that Emily had written something she couldn't say out loud yet, his heart started beating faster, knowing words on paper often carry weight spoken words cannot. And Sarah made it clear she wasn't there to stay in the middle but to step aside once the truth was shared, reminding Michael that what happened next was between him and Emily. And as he held the envelope, feeling its thin edges between his fingers, he understood that Sarah's role wasn't intrusion but support, someone making sure the message wasn't lost. And Emily looked at him with a mix of hope and fear, silently asking him to read it. And in that moment, Michael realized that this surprise wasn't meant to comfort him, but to wake him up, to push him into a place where he could no longer hide behind routine. And as he took a slow breath and prepared to open the envelope, the room felt smaller, quieter, and more honest than it had in years, setting the stage for words that would change the direction of their night and possibly their future. Michael unfolded the envelope with trembling hands, feeling the paper's weight as if it carried years of unspoken words. And the moment he began reading, he felt the raw honesty of Emily's heart spill onto him, her words describing nights she had felt invisible, the quiet ache of loneliness despite being in the same room, her gentle admission that love never left but had become quiet, and each line cut through the routine he had wrapped himself in for years, forcing him to see the distance that had grown without either of them realizing. And as he continued, Emily wrote about her own fears, her habit of smiling instead of speaking, the guilt she carried for not bridging the gap sooner. And Michael's chest tightened with a mixture of regret and longing because he recognized every word. The silence he thought was harmless now revealed as walls built between them, and when he looked up, Emily knelt in front of him, her eyes searching his, vulnerable yet brave, her hands resting on his knees as if grounding him in the moment. And he realized she wasn't blaming him but sharing the truth she had held close for too long. And Michael swallowed hard, voice cracking as he finally spoke, admitting how he thought providing for their life was enough, that he didn't see how lonely she felt or how they had both been drifting without noticing. And Emily reached for his hand, their fingers entwining, bringing a warmth that reminded him of why he had fallen in love with her. And Sarah remained in the background, her presence calm and supportive, never intrusive, giving them space while silently encouraging honesty and reconnection. And Michael felt tears well up as the letter's words echoed in his mind, each one a reminder that love required effort, understanding, and courage to face difficult truths. And the fast pace of their conversation carried them from confession to reconciliation, words tumbling over each other, apologies mingling with gratitude, laughter and tears blending as the weight of months of distance began to lift. And then Sarah gently cleared her throat, signaling that there was one more piece to the surprise. And Emily's eyes shone with anticipation and nervousness as she guided Michael's attention to the small box she had placed on the table, and inside were 2 plane tickets, 3 days away from schedules. Phones and distractions. A promise. Of time just for them, a chance to reconnect and remember the early days of their love, and Michael felt a surge of hope. The kind that makes the heart feel lighter, that reminds you that relationships can be nurtured back to life when both people are willing. And Emily explained softly that Sarah had insisted on helping create this moment because she knew the importance of choosing love again instead of letting life slide by. And as Michael stood to embrace Emily, holding her quietly but fully, he felt the room shift, the candles flickering softly as if in approval, and Sarah smiled from the corner, satisfied that her role as a helper and witness had brought them to this fragile but beautiful moment. And Michael realized that the surprise, the letter and the tickets weren't just gestures, but a carefully crafted reminder of their commitment, of the work love demands, and of the fact that even after years, hearts could reconnect when honesty, support, and courage came together. And as he held Emily close, he understood that the night had changed them forever, not with drama or grandeur, but with truth, emotion, and the quiet power of being seen and understood. Sarah picked up the small box from the shelf and placed it carefully on the table, drawing Michael's attention as Emily's eyes filled with a mix of nervousness and excitement. And when he opened it, he found 2 plane tickets for a 3-day trip, a simple gesture that carried an enormous meaning, a promise of time away from routines, responsibilities, and the invisible walls that had formed between him and Emily. And as he held the tickets, the weight of their intentions struck him. The thought that Emily had planned this with Sarah's help, that someone had quietly guided them toward a chance to reconnect, made his chest tighten with gratitude and awe. And Emily explained that this was their opportunity to remember who they were together before life got busy, before silence replaced conversation, before love became a quiet companion instead of an active presence. And Michael felt a rush of emotions, relief, hope, and anticipation mingling as he realized the night wasn't about gifts or apologies, but about rebuilding a bridge, a chance to choose each other again without distraction. And Sarah stepped back, her role complete, watching them with a gentle smile, knowing she had helped them reach this fragile but vital moment. And Michael turned to Emily, his hands shaking slightly as he held hers, feeling her warmth, her heartbeat matching his in a silent rhythm of understanding. And he whispered words he hadn't said in months, admitting how he had taken for granted the closeness they once had, how he hadn't realized the distance had grown. And Emily responded softly, telling him that she had been afraid to speak, afraid that honesty might push them further apart. But the courage to write the letter and plan this trip had been her way of choosing love again. And as they sat together, Michael felt the stress of years melt into a quiet calm, the realization that love needed effort but could be renewed, and that it was never too late to reconnect when both hearts were willing. And Sarah, standing in the background, reminded them silently that sometimes the right support comes from someone who encourages truth without taking over, someone who gives space while holding the weight of care. And Michael realized that her presence had been the perfect balance, giving Emily the courage to be vulnerable and him the clarity to accept it. And as they planned a trip, discussing little details, flights, hotels, and simple moments to enjoy together, laughter began to fill the room again, soft and natural, breaking months of tension. And Michael could feel the anticipation building. It's the kind that comes from shared hope. And he noticed the little things, the way Emily's hair caught the candlelight, the curve of her smile, the sparkle in her eyes that reminded him of the woman he had fallen in love with. And as he pulled her into a quiet embrace, they didn't need to speak, the moment saying everything, their hearts realigning after years of quiet distance. And he understood that this surprise was not about material gifts, but about time, tension, honesty, and the courage to face love even when it felt fragile. And as the night ended, the music, softly playing in the background, candles flickering gently. Michael felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. A hope that their relationship could thrive again, strengthened by honesty and care. And as he held Emily close, he knew that the trip, the letter, and the gentle guidance of Sarah had created a turning point. A night that would remain etched in memory. A night when love, patience, and courage had come together to remind them both that even after difficulties, hearts can reconnect, emotions can heal, and the future can feel possible again.